going on, guys, and welcome to today's video. And today we are going to be getting the Camaro ready for our next track day that is actually in like 2 days or 3 days here. So this thing needs front brakes done. The front brake pads were getting pretty thin after the last track day, and we are getting ready to return to HALLETT motor racing circuit there in Oklahoma to attempt to go for broke and try to beat my now new personal lap previous best out there. So we're gonna get some fresh brake pads on this thing, and I thought I would show you guys my track day brake job, step by step, if you will. So we are not going to be replacing rotors or turning rotors, but we are going to be installing brake pads and cleaning our brake rotors. So again, if you've got a brake issue or you're doing a normal brake job, yes, you'd probably want to have the rotors turned or machined or replaced if they're worn. These brake rotors are still in good shape. We are just putting fresh brake pads on the thing for track use. So other than our new brake pads, we do need a couple of things. This is a brake rotor hone. This is basically just a really coarse abrasive hone that we can use to scrub or clean up our brake rotors. I've also got a roll-lock sanding disc that we'll kind of use in correlation with this, because what we're going to want to do is obviously put our new brake pads on, but then clean and scrub up our brake rotors front and back, because we want those new brake pads to be able to bed in to nice bare rotor surface versus having to bed into already, brake pad deposits on the rotor. So I'm gonna get this thing up in the air here, and we will kind of jump down and see what we need to do. So first things first, we are going to get our brake caliper pistons pressed back into the caliper so we can get our old pads out and the new pads slid in. Now, since we don't really care about the old brake pads, we are able to, use a small pry bar, a small screwdriver, and pry between the brake pad and the brake rotor, since we aren't really going to hurt the brake rotor and we don't really care if we gouge into the brake pads. But before that, I like to get all of our spring assembly and our pins off of the caliper. Now, I used to always use a small punch and a hammer and try to not damage the paint on the calipers, but you inevitably would always slip off of the pin with the punch and put a small scratch, mar, whatever in the paint on the caliper. But I finally purchased the Brembo pin removal tool, and this thing has been absolutely awesome on not damaging calipers. I'll throw a link down in the description just for a cheap Amazon link. I think this thing was like sub $20, and this is worth it if you are doing Brembo style brake jobs. This thing will fit on the pin, and you're able just to use a hammer and knock the pin out without any worry of damaging the caliper. Now, some of your larger 6-piston Brembo style brakes will have a big through bolt here, kind of bridging the top of the caliper. So that has a 13 millimeter here on the back that we'll need to pull that, slide the main pin out, and then, like I said, we'll be able to knock both of the caliper or the brake pad pins out of the way. So guys, like I said, that pin removal tool is absolutely worth the money if you are doing Brembo style brakes at any sort of frequency. Now, like we said, we need to push those pistons back. So A, we're able to remove the old pads, and B, we are going to be able to slide the new pads back in. So again, we're just going to get in here with our pry tool and work the brake pads away from the rotor to help push those pistons into the caliper. So I've started with the back. I'm now going to throw a screwdriver in between the back pad and the rotor face, because when I push the front pistons back in, it would have just pushed the back pistons back out, if that makes sense. So guys, here we can see our old pads and see how darn thin I got those. I always end up getting them a little bit thinner than I would like to. Now, the general rule of thumb is, for track day purposes, you really don't want your friction or pad material thinner than the backing plate. So you can see we are decently thinner than the backing plate. So these were absolutely due to be replaced for a future track day. So now on to our rotor cleaning, scrubbing, whatever you want to call it here. Again, whether you've got a brake hone like this, a sanding roll-lock disc, here is a more aggressive sanding roll-lock disc. One of these, or somehow you're going to want to clean the rotor surface kind of back down to bare metal. Now, does this need to be perfect? No, absolutely not. But we're just trying to clean up the rotors as much as we can, so our new brake pads have some sort of clean iron to be able to bed into. Okay guys, so here is a pretty decent picture here of the two different surfaces. Here is kind of bare iron, bare metal here on our rotor, and here is the rest of the surface that is still, heat checked. It's got pad material, all that embedded into that rotor surface. So what we're trying to do is just get the whole rotor looking shiny again, if you will, so that brake pad has a nice clean, or as clean as we can be, surface to bed into. Now, this rotor does have a small groove in it all the way around. Not ideal, but again, not terribly bad. And again, we're also looking for heat cracking, things like that that might tell you the rotor's garbage and we need a fresh one. But this thing is hopefully still going to get another set of brake pads ran through it on track. But yeah, that is what we are kind of going for here, is that clean, shiny surface versus this darker brake pad material, heat checked surface up here. Now that we've got our rotor all scrubbed in front and back, again, it looks very splotchy here on camera, and it kind of is in person, but that's kind of what we're going for, is just a nice new rough surface for that pad to be able to bed into. We are now able or ready to get our pads slid into place. Now, there is no special tool for the pin installation. You're just normally able to kind of knock it into place with a hammer here on the back. So guys, just like that, we are now ready for our upcoming track day. Now, yes, of course, you are going to want to bed in those new brake pads, and you're not really going to want to be doing that on track. But the bedding procedure is going to kind of depend or change depending on the brake manufacturer recommendation. Normally, the brake bedding procedure is, getting up to speed, 60 mile an hour, getting on the brake, slowing down to 40, speeding back up to 60, doing that a handful of times, and then driving around to allow the pads to cool down. But again, kind of reference your brake pad manufacturer. They may have a very special procedure to properly bed in their pads. So I need to get this wheel thrown back on. I need to go out and bed in these pads, and hopefully in about 3 days, we will be back out at HALLETT, and I'm hoping to go quickly. We're gonna be in a little bit cooler air. We're gonna have fresh brakes, and hopefully a little more confidence now on our new Goodyear tires. So hopefully I'll strap the camera on the car and we'll get some cool footage. But if you are planning a track day and you haven't thought about your brakes recently, definitely take a look. Remember that kind of good rule of thumb: if the brake material is thinner than the brake backing plate, or the brake pad backing plate, if that makes sense. If it's thinner, you probably want to get a fresh set of pads depending on that vehicle. It might go through those thin brakes in a rather quick amount of time when you are actually on track. So guys, thanks for coming out here in the garage with me today and doing a little bit of track maintenance on the Camaro before it gets ready to go out and go fast around the racetrack again. And guys, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.